The Apache neighbor was bitten on the thigh. She pleaded with the rancher, "Remove the poison quickly." The morning began like many others on the ranch, calm and quiet, with the sun slowly rising over the dry land. The rancher woke up early, as he always did. Years of living close to nature had trained his body to rise before the heat set in. He stepped outside his small wooden house and looked across the open land. The air was cool, and the sky carried soft colors of orange and pale blue. Birds moved between the trees, and the distant hills stood silent, watching over everything. This land was not easy to live on, but it was honest. Every day demanded effort, patience, and respect for nature. The rancher believed the land gave back only what you earned through hard work. He had learned that lesson over many years, mostly by living alone and depending on himself. He fixed fences, checked the water lines, and cared for the animals with steady hands and a focused mind. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words carried weight. Not far from his land lived his Apache neighbor. She was known for her strength and independence. She did not rely on others easily, and she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her family had lived on that land long before fences and property lines existed. She understood the desert, its dangers, and its beauty better than most. She respected the land as something alive, something that needed to be listened to. That morning, she set out early on her horse to check a fence line near the edge of her property. Recent winds had been strong, and she worried that part of the fence might have fallen. If the fence was broken, animals could wander off, and that could create problems for both her and the rancher. She believed in solving issues before they became bigger troubles. The sun was still low when she reached the area where tall grass met dry soil. The land looked peaceful, but she knew better than to trust appearances. She dismounted and walked carefully, eyes scanning the ground as she moved. Every step was slow and deliberate. Years of experience had taught her that danger often stayed hidden until it was too late. As she bent down to inspect the fence post, something sudden happened. A sharp pain struck her upper thigh, fast and unexpected. It felt like fire and pressure at the same time. She gasped and stumbled back, her heart racing. She looked down and realized something dangerous had bitten her. Whatever it was had disappeared into the grass just as quickly as it had struck. For a moment she froze. Pain spread through her leg, deep and intense. Her breath came faster and her hands began to shake. She knew this was serious. Living in this land meant knowing the risks, and she understood that some bites could turn deadly if not treated quickly. Panic tried to rise, but she forced herself to stay calm. She pressed her hand against her leg and took a deep breath. Staying calm was the first rule of survival. She had been taught that fear could make things worse. The pain was growing and her leg felt heavy, but she knew she could not stay there. Help was too far away and time mattered. With effort, she made her way back to her horse. Every step sent pain through her body, but she refused to stop. She pulled herself onto the saddle, gripping tightly to keep from falling. Her vision blurred slightly, but she focused on the direction of the rancher's land. He was the closest person who could help. The ride felt longer than it ever had before. The sun climbed higher and the heat began to rise from the ground. Sweat mixed with dust on her face. Her leg throbbed and a strange weakness spread through her body. Still, she pushed forward, urging the horse to move faster. She spoke softly to the animal, drawing strength from its steady movement. On the rancher's side of the land, the morning continued as usual. He was repairing a section of fence when he noticed movement in the distance. At first, he thought it was just another animal, but then he recognized the shape of a rider. Something about the way she was moving felt wrong. She leaned forward, her posture tense, and the horse was moving faster than normal. The rancher wiped his hands and watched closely. Years of experience had taught him to notice small details. When she reached the edge of his land, she nearly slipped from the saddle. He dropped what he was doing and ran toward her. Before she could say much, her strength failed, and he caught her just in time. Her face was pale and her breathing was uneven. She struggled to stand, leaning heavily on him. When she finally spoke, her voice was strained but clear enough to understand. She told him she had been bitten and needed help immediately. The seriousness in her eyes told him this was not something to take lightly. He helped her sit down in the shade near the house. His movements were careful, respectful, and controlled. He asked simple questions, keeping his voice calm to help her stay focused. She pointed to her thigh, where the pain had started. Even without seeing much, he knew this was dangerous. The rancher felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. This was not just about being a good neighbor. This was about responsibility, trust, and life itself. He knew that help from town would take time. The land was remote and every minute mattered. She looked at him with urgency, her eyes filled with both fear and determination. She asked him to act quickly, to do whatever he could to help slow the poison until proper medical help could arrive. There was no hesitation in her request, only a clear understanding that survival depended on action. The rancher took a deep breath. He had lived through emergencies before, but this was different. This was a life resting in his hands. He knew that panic would help no one. He focused on what needed to be done now in this moment with the knowledge he had. The desert around them remained silent, as if watching. The wind moved gently through the grass, unaware of the struggle taking place. In that quiet space between fear and action, two lives became connected by more than land or boundaries. Trust was formed in a moment where there was no room for doubt. As the sun continued its climb, the rancher prepared himself to act, knowing that the choices made in the next moments could change everything. The peaceful morning had turned into a test of courage, calm, and humanity, one that would leave a lasting mark on both of them. The rancher did not waste a single moment. As soon as she sat down in the shade, he moved with purpose. He had spent his whole life in places where help was far away, and decisions had to be made quickly. He grabbed a clean cloth and a bottle of water from inside the house and returned to her side. His face was calm, but inside his mind was racing, measuring time, risk, and distance. She tried to stay strong, but the pain in her leg was getting worse. It was no longer sharp. It had turned deep and heavy, like a strong pressure spreading slowly. Her breathing became uneven. She did not want to show fear, but her hands trembled slightly. The rancher noticed this and spoke gently, telling her to focus on his voice and keep breathing steadily. He knew that panic could make her weaker. He asked her exactly where she had been bitten and how long ago it happened. She answered clearly, forcing herself to stay alert. She told him it happened near the fence line, less than an hour ago. Hearing that, he knew they were racing against time. He also knew they could not wait for outside help without doing something first. He helped her lie back carefully, making sure she was comfortable and shaded from the sun. He kept his movements respectful and steady, never rushing in a way that could cause harm. He had learned long ago that calm hands could save lives. He checked her leg carefully without causing unnecessary pain, looking for any sign that could help him understand how serious the situation was. She watched him closely. In that moment, she was not just trusting him as a neighbor, but as the only person standing between her and something far worse. She swallowed hard and told him again that she needed help quickly. Her voice was firm, not begging but honest. She understood the seriousness of her condition, and she knew he did too. The rancher stood for a moment, thinking. He remembered old lessons from his father and other ranchers who had faced emergencies with no doctors nearby. He knew that not every old method was safe, but he also knew that doing nothing was not an option. His goal was simple: slow the poison, keep her stable, and get her professional help as soon as possible. He told her that he needed her to stay awake and keep talking to him. He asked her about her family, her horses, and the land she loved. It was not small talk. It was a way to keep her mind focused and her body fighting. She answered slowly, sometimes pausing to catch her breath, but she did not stop talking. As minutes passed, the heat of the day increased. The rancher wiped sweat from his forehead but did not step away. He checked the road in the distance, calculating how long it would take to get help if he had to drive her himself. The nearest medical center was far and the road was rough. Moving her too fast could be dangerous, but waiting too long was just as risky. She suddenly felt a wave of weakness move through her body. Her head felt light and her vision blurred for a moment. She told him what she was feeling and he listened carefully. He adjusted her position, making sure she was supported and not losing balance. He gave her small sips of water, careful not to give too much. The bond between them grew stronger with every passing minute. They had lived as neighbors for years, exchanging polite words and shared boundaries, but never moments like this. Now there was no distance between them, only trust and shared fear of the unknown. He reassured her that she was not alone and that he would not leave her side. His voice remained steady, even when doubt tried to creep into his thoughts. He reminded himself that fear had no place here. What mattered was focus. Time felt strange. Minutes felt long, yet passed too quickly. The rancher made a decision. Waiting longer without moving toward help was too risky. He told her he was going to prepare the truck. He explained everything clearly so she would not feel surprised or scared. He asked if she could sit up with his help. She nodded, even though the effort cost her strength. He supported her carefully, helping her move inch by inch. Every movement was slow and controlled. She leaned heavily on him, and he adjusted his grip to keep her steady. They moved toward the truck together, step by step, like two people walking a narrow path where one mistake could mean disaster. Once she was safely seated, he secured her so she would not slide or fall during the drive. He made sure she was shaded and comfortable. Before starting the engine, he looked at her and told her again that she needed to keep talking to him during the ride. She gave a weak but determined nod. The truck rolled forward, kicking up dust as it left the ranch. The road was uneven and the rancher drove carefully, avoiding sudden turns or sharp movements. His eyes stayed on the road, but his attention never left her. He asked her questions constantly, listening to every word, watching for any change in her condition. She spoke about her childhood, about learning the land from elders, about how survival meant respect for nature. Her voice faded in and out, but she kept trying. The rancher responded when needed, reminding her to stay with him, to stay present. The drive felt endless. The desert stretched out on both sides, silent and unforgiving. The rancher's hands tightened on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from determination. He refused to let this land take her life after she had respected it for so long. At one point, she grew very quiet. The rancher called her name louder this time. She answered slowly, but the delay worried him. He spoke to her firmly, telling her to keep her eyes open and stay awake. His voice carried urgency now, but not panic. Finally, signs of help appeared in the distance. A building. A road sign, proof that they were not alone anymore. The rancher felt a small wave of relief, but he did not slow down. Not yet. He stayed focused until they reached their destination. As he pulled in, he stepped out quickly and called for help. Others rushed toward them, responding to the seriousness in his voice. As professionals took over, he stepped back slightly but did not leave. He stayed close, watching, ready to answer questions. She looked at him one last time before being taken inside. Her eyes were tired, but there was gratitude there too. She did not need to say anything. He understood. The second part of their story ended there, not with relief, not with certainty, but with hope. The danger was not over, but neither was the fight. What had begun as a simple morning had turned into a moment that would stay with both of them forever. A reminder that real strength often shows itself in quiet, steady actions when everything is on the line. The hours that followed felt heavy and slow, as if time itself had thickened. After the medical staff took her inside, the rancher was asked to wait. He sat on a hard bench near the entrance, hands resting on his knees, staring at the floor. The sounds around him faded into the background. His thoughts stayed fixed on one thing only: whether she would be all right. He replayed the morning again and again in his mind, every choice, every second. He wondered if he had acted fast enough, if he had missed something important, if there was anything more he could have done. The land had taught him many lessons, but moments like this reminded him how fragile life could be, even for the strongest people. Inside, she was being cared for, surrounded by people trained to handle situations like hers. Still, fear followed her like a shadow. She drifted in and out of awareness, held steady by voices telling her to stay calm. Her leg throbbed with pain and heat, but worse than that was the uncertainty. She had always trusted herself, trusted the land, trusted her knowledge. Now she had been forced to place her life in the hands of others. As she lay there, memories came to her in pieces. She remembered riding as a child, her elders teaching her how to read the land, how to listen to the wind, how to respect danger without fearing it. She remembered being told that strength was not about standing alone, but knowing when to accept help. That thought stayed with her, steadying her breathing. The rancher waited longer than he expected. At one point, someone came out to ask him questions. He answered clearly and honestly, describing everything he had seen and done. When they thanked him, he nodded quietly, but their words did little to ease his worry. He knew thanks would mean nothing if she did not recover. Eventually, he was allowed to see her. The room was quiet and bright, filled with equipment and soft sounds. She looked smaller lying there, less like the strong woman who rode across the land with confidence. But when she opened her eyes and saw him, something familiar returned to her face, a calm strength that refused to disappear. He stepped closer, careful not to disturb anything. He spoke her name softly. She turned her head slightly and managed a faint smile. It was not much, but it was enough to ease the tight feeling in his chest. He told her she was safe now and that help had arrived just in time. She listened, nodding slowly. Her voice was weak when she spoke, but her words were clear. She thanked him, not in a dramatic way, not with emotion spilling over, but with simple honesty. She told him she trusted him from the moment she reached his land. That trust, she said, had made all the difference. The rancher did not know how to respond at first. He was not used to words like that. He simply told her he did what anyone should do, but inside, he felt something shift. This was more than a neighborly act. This was a shared moment that would stay with him forever. As the day moved forward, her condition slowly stabilized. The danger did not vanish all at once, but the worst seemed to pass. The staff explained that the next hours were important and that rest was necessary. The rancher was asked to step out again. This time he did so with a little more hope. While waiting, he stepped outside and looked at the sky. The sun was high now, bright and unforgiving, just as it always was. The land looked the same as it had that morning, calm and endless. Yet everything felt different to him. The land was no longer just something to work and survive on. It had become the place where two lives crossed in a way that could not be undone. For her, recovery was slow. Each hour brought new challenges. Her body felt tired in a way she had never known before. Still, she fought quietly, following instructions, focusing on breathing, on staying present. She reminded herself that she had survived worse things in life, even if not like this. As evening approached, the rancher was finally told she would be all right. The words did not hit him all at once. He stood there for a moment, letting them sink in. Then he nodded, thanked them, and stepped outside again. Only then did he allow himself to feel relief. His shoulders relaxed for the first time all day. When she was well enough to speak more, she asked for him. He returned to her side, and this time the room felt less tense. They talked quietly about small things at first, the weather, the animals, the land. Then slowly the conversation turned deeper. She told him how she had always handled things alone, how asking for help was never easy for her, Admitting fear felt like weakness, but that morning had taught her something important. Survival was not just about strength, it was about connection. He listened carefully. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he told her that he had learned something too. Living alone had made him self-reliant but also distant. Helping her had reminded him that being there for someone else gave meaning to the hard life he lived. Night fell outside, bringing cooler air and quiet. Lights inside the building softened. She drifted into sleep, her breathing steady. The rancher stayed a little longer, watching over her like the land itself had once watched over them both. Part 3 of their story was not filled with action or danger. It was filled with realization. Two people, shaped by the same harsh land, learned that strength did not mean standing alone. It meant trusting, acting, and caring, especially when the cost of hesitation was too high. What lay ahead was still uncertain. Recovery would take time. Life would not return to normal right away, but something important had already changed. A bond had formed, quiet and strong, one that neither distance nor time could easily break. The next few days tested both of them in ways neither had expected. Although the danger had passed, recovery was not easy. Her body felt weak and even small movements took effort. Some hours were better than others. At times she felt hopeful, clear-minded, and steady. At other times, fatigue weighed heavily on her, making it hard to focus. She learned quickly that healing was not a straight path forward but a slow series of steps, pauses, and patience. The rancher returned to his land each evening, but his thoughts stayed with her. He followed his routine, feeding the animals, checking the fences, preparing meals, but everything felt different. The quiet he once welcomed now felt heavy. Each task reminded him how close he had come to losing someone who mattered more than he had realized. Every morning he drove back to check on her. He never arrived empty-handed. Sometimes he brought fresh fruit, sometimes warm food, sometimes just clean clothes she had asked for. He did not stay long at first, not wanting to disturb her rest, but his presence became a steady comfort. He did not need to speak much. Just knowing he was nearby helped her feel less alone. As her strength slowly returned, she began to walk short distances with support. Each step was careful and controlled. She did not rush herself. She knew her body needed time. The medical staff encouraged her patience, reminding her that pushing too hard could slow healing. She listened, even when frustration rose inside her. One afternoon, when she felt strong enough to sit outside, the rancher joined her. They sat quietly, watching the sky shift as clouds passed slowly overhead. The land in the distance looked familiar and comforting. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling connected to it again. She spoke first, breaking the silence. She admitted how difficult it was for her to slow down. Her whole life had been about movement, work, and responsibility. Sitting still made her feel useless. The rancher listened carefully and told her that rest was not weakness. It was part of survival, just like action. He said the land itself rested between seasons, gathering strength. His words stayed with her. She began to see healing not as waiting, but as working in a different way. Each deep breath, each careful step, each moment of calm became its own form of effort. As days passed, she shared more of her life with him. Stories of her family, her childhood, and the lessons passed down to her. She spoke of how respect for nature was taught through example, not words, how mistakes were accepted as part of learning, how courage meant facing fear with honesty. In return, he spoke about his own life, about choosing solitude after years of hardship, about finding peace in routine and silence, about believing he was stronger alone. Saying these things out loud made him realize how long he had kept people at a distance. Helping her had opened something inside him he did not know was closed. There were moments of doubt, too. Some nights, she struggled with pain and worry. She wondered if she would ever return to her full strength. The rancher noticed the change in her mood and stayed longer during visits, reminding her how far she had already come. He encouraged her without pushing, offering support without control. One evening, she asked him why he had acted so quickly that morning. Why he had not hesitated. He thought for a moment before answering. He told her that the land had taught him one rule above all others. When life is at risk, you act. You do not wait for certainty. You move with purpose and accept responsibility. Her eyes filled with emotion, though she tried to hide it. She told him that his actions had restored her faith in people as much as they had saved her life. Living independently sometimes made her forget how powerful trust could be. Slowly, plans were made for her return home. Not immediately, but soon. She would need support at first. The rancher offered help without making it sound like a burden. He said he would check the fences, bring supplies, and make sure she did not push herself too hard. She accepted, understanding now that accepting help did not take away her strength, it honored it. The day she was cleared to leave, the sky was soft and clear. The rancher drove her back carefully, avoiding rough paths. The land welcomed her quietly, just as it always had. When she stepped onto her own ground again, she felt both relief and gratitude. Everything looked the same, yet she knew she was not. At her home, he helped her settle in. He made sure everything she needed was within reach. He reminded her to rest and promised to return the next day. Before he left, they stood for a moment in silence. No words were needed. What they had shared could not be easily explained. That night, alone but not lonely, she reflected on the past weeks. Pain had brought fear, but fear had brought clarity. She understood now that strength was not about never falling. It was about rising with the help that life offered. For the rancher, returning to his quiet house felt different. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt full of meaning. He knew his life had changed, not because of danger but because of connection. Part 4 of their story was about endurance. Not dramatic moments or urgent decisions, but the quiet strength needed to heal, to trust, and to accept change. It was about learning that survival did not end when danger passed. It continued through patience, care, and shared humanity. Time continued to move forward, gentle but steady, just like the land itself. Weeks passed, and with each new day she grew a little stronger. The weakness that once made simple movements difficult slowly faded. Her steps became firmer, her breathing steadier. The pain that had once demanded all her attention softened into a distant memory. It was still there, reminding her to be careful, but it no longer controlled her. The rancher kept his promise. He visited often, sometimes bringing supplies, sometimes helping with small tasks she was not yet ready to handle alone. Other times, he simply sat nearby, fixing tools or watching the horizon. Their conversations were easy now, no longer shaped by fear or urgency. Silence between them felt comfortable, not awkward. One morning, she surprised him by already being outside when he arrived. She was standing near the fence, leaning slightly on it, watching the sunrise. He walked up quietly, not wanting to interrupt the moment. She smiled when she noticed him and said she wanted to greet the day properly again, the way she used to. They stood together, watching light spread across the land. The desert looked endless, calm, and strong. She told him that during her recovery, she had thought a lot about life and how quickly it could change. She said the experience had not made her fearful, but more aware. More thankful. He listened and nodded. He shared that helping her had changed how he saw his own life. For years, he had believed that living quietly and alone was enough. Now, he understood that connection gave meaning to effort. Caring for someone else did not weaken him, it made him stronger. As her strength returned fully, she began to take back her responsibilities, slowly and carefully. She checked her animals, repaired small things, and spent more time outdoors. The rancher continued to help, but less out of necessity and more out of choice. They worked side by side, not as rescuer and survivor, but as equals. People in the nearby area heard about what had happened. Some came by to check on her, others to thank the rancher for what he had done. He accepted their words quietly, never seeking attention. To him, what mattered most was that she was standing there, alive and strong. One afternoon, she invited him to sit with her and share a meal. It was simple food, prepared slowly, with care. As they ate, she told him something important. She said that the land had always taught her to respect danger, but that experience had taught her to respect kindness just as much. She said that trusting him had been one of the hardest choices she had ever made and the best. He did not respond right away. When he did, his voice was calm but sincere. He told her that when she arrived that morning asking for help, he did not see weakness. He saw courage. The courage to ask, the courage to trust, the courage to live. As the seasons began to shift, their bond settled into something steady and lasting. They did not label it or define it. It did not need a name. It was built on shared experience, mutual respect, and understanding. They looked out for each other naturally, without expectation. The land noticed the change too, in its own quiet way. Fences stood stronger. Animals were calmer. Work felt lighter. The rancher no longer felt like a stranger to the world beyond his boundaries. She no longer felt like she had to face everything alone. One evening, as the sun set low and painted the sky in deep colors, she stood beside him and said she was grateful for that morning, even though it had been frightening. She said it had reminded her how precious life was and how moments of crisis could reveal truth. He agreed. He said some moments came not to break us, but to bring us closer to who we were meant to be. They watched the sun disappear behind the hills, the land settling into night. The same land that had once held danger now held peace. The same silence that once felt heavy now felt full. Their story did not end with loud celebration or dramatic change. It ended quietly, the way real life often does, with two people standing stronger than before, with trust earned through action, with respect deepened by experience. And long after the pain faded, long after the memory softened, one truth remained clear to both of them. Survival is not only about escaping danger. It is about what you carry forward afterward: gratitude, connection, and the courage to care.